a conversation about courage, compassion, and community. It is being brought to you by Mr. John Sterling. John is a medically retired United States Army non-commissioned officer and a graduate of Arizona State University and Capella University. John founded Azimuth Leadership LLC in 2017, a behavioral health leadership program. In 2022, John launched the Alphas and Aces Foundation. John is currently the director of programming at Ben Services at the Fayette Pregnancy Resource Center, or PRC, in Annual Georgia.
Thank you, April. Appreciate you. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Appreciate you being flexible with our time frames. In my military background, we would call coming to an event that's slightly late, adapting and overcoming. So that's what we're doing, right? We're going to make it happen. She gave you a little bit of a bio. What I want to make sure you guys understand more than anything else, number one, I am a man of faith. Number two, I'm a father, right? Which assumes there's a lady around. I'll tell you about her as well. But I am very interested in engaging men in a level that our culture doesn't find necessarily very palatable. There's not a space for men that I've found, other than the ones that I've created in the places where I find myself, that allows for these three audacious words: courage, compassion, and community, right? So what I want to first do, we have a picture in front of us, right? My wife is the reason I have this picture. And so when you see that picture, take a good hard look at it. Give me some words or some statements that come to mind. That's huge.
Nice.
Love that as well.
Love it.
Okay.
I'm the advocate. I say a little bit over the top, man. 'Cause you don't see a lot of men.
Okay. Yeah. I was okay. So that's one of the phrases I was hoping would surface, right? Come on in, brother. Grab a That's fine. That's fine. You can grab a flyer there just so you know what we're doing. I was actually hoping that some of those kinds of comments would surface. How about weird? Never seen that before. Not in my lifetime. Who are they? Like to meet those dudes, right? Are they actors? Did they get told to do that? Right? All those things. And so when I dive into a conversation that's titled Fatherhood Matters, I want to reflect right now. Does fatherhood matter to you, and does the culture say it does? And you can answer that any way you want.
It matters, but the culture says it don't.
Agreed. It matters, but the culture says it doesn't. Okay? Let's get one more response. Do fathers matter?
They do.
How many fathers do we have in this room? By raise of hands. Okay? All but one. How many people in this room, and this could be 100%, have a father? Okay. How many people in this room are largely impacted by the way their fathers engage them? That's a 100% answer as well. Even if you didn't raise, it's impossible, right? So in science, we call that two kinds of genetics. Regular genetics, hey, you look like your daddy, you look like your mom. Then there's this other thing called epigenetics. Anybody ever heard of that? That's environmental influence. Was your dad a yeller? Was your dad a condescender? Was your dad a gaslighter? Was your dad a liar? Was your dad an addict? Was he loving? Was he engaging? All of these things are picked up through the social environment and become the pattern under which we, by default, unless we're doing a lot of work, will engage those under our leadership. Yes, sir.
You forgot one.
Okay.
Especially from a black man's standpoint.
Okay.
You're fathering your life.
So here we go. We got automatic audience participation. Thank you, my brother. What was your first name? Bernie. Bernie speaking truth, right? So let's back up. The work that I'm currently privileged to do is right down the street on Lanier Avenue, just after, as you're going east after the square, at a place called Fayette PRC, Pregnancy Resource Center. So the first, yeah, exactly, that the cant of the head, like, okay, what are you doing up in there, right? Last thing I heard, every pregnant woman has a dude in their life. or have, right? Right. There's a dude involved, right? And so in those environments, when we provide resources to the pregnancy situation, there are resources that are required for her, and there are resources that are required for him, and there are resources required for them. The tagline on our program, which is called Equip, says a journey of fatherhood, because that's why they're there. That's why every dude walks in the door, right? He thinks he's a daddy, he is a daddy. Fatherhood, friendship, faith, those elements are all what that man needs potentially, right? For that journey. He needs all those. That's what we provide. But how do you do that outside of courage, compassion, and community? Let's go to courage. What is courage? Give me a real quick definition of what courage is to you.
Just being brave when fear is still there.
Okay, perfect. Let's just run with that one because that was good, right? How many dudes that have children had fear? For various reasons, right? And we might be able to say an ongoing fear of the fact that there's an asset running around out there that you have less and less control over, right? I'm getting ready to have dinner tonight with my 25-year-old asset and my 28-year-old asset. Why do I call them assets? Because they are human beings that add tremendous value to my life. And I want to manage, and sometimes this guy wants to control them, and that ain't happening, right? So courage is the ability to step in. I talk about 3 words a lot. Lean is one of them. Leaning in to fatherhood, even when it's scary, right? The guys that come inside the pregnancy center are scared. And so enter friendship. What percentage of young men that walk inside my office do you think identify themselves as having friends of the variety that are valuable and helpful to them? What percentage have those people in their lives? What do you think?
Less than 2. I would say 15%. They already have. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about 5? Okay. So I like to flip the script and say 99.9% of the men that walk in my office have, they got a lot of homeboys. They got a lot of running partners, right? They got Bobby. And if they say Bobby is their friend in my office and their associated female is with them, I get this a lot. He ain't your friend. She don't agree with him about that. He's not helping us. He's not an asset, right? So I have the ability to come alongside them and provide help and courage, right? So let me tell you a quick story, and I know we have a limited amount of time, but this is where courage comes in my life, and this is where friendship comes in, right? So I am 58 years old right now. At 55, after 31 years of marriage, done. Now, I'm about ready to celebrate next spring 35 years of marriage, so something happened, right? But that process involved a man named Buddy Curry, who's my best friend. A man that gave me the courage to lean into brokenness, to lean into pain, to lean into fear as a friend and walk with me through it. So this idea of friendship is powerful. And you know how I knew that was really powerful, gentlemen? Because when we were separated, my wife literally left the state of Georgia and went to Arizona with divorce on her mind. But she wanted to know one thing. And like I told you, I'm a man of faith, so I go to church, I read my Bible. Those are things that are important for support. But she wanted to know, am I hanging out with Buddy? She wanted to know, do I have that kind of support? And so the support from Buddy turned into courage for me to be able to lean into difficult times. Most men are going through life fearful. They don't have, yes, sir.
I'm sorry to broke you out. She wanted to know what kind of support are you hanging out with Buddy in what way? You gotta be specific with me now.
You bet. So Buddy is the kind of friend your wife does want you to have. She's the guy, or he's the guy that's my go-to. He's my dude, right? He's the guy.
Wrong. He's there to tell you.
Absolutely. And vice versa. And thank you for the clarification, right?
I'm just.
Yes. So I have that, and I only have Buddy. I have other good associations, but thank you for the clarity on that. So point being is that was important to my wife, and it helped me to be the courageous man that I needed to be. But along with that, how about this? What did Buddy need to lean into John in a difficult time of terrible chaos and confusion? He needed that second word. And this is where us as men, we get tripped up, because compassion is viewed as female. How do you feel? Let's talk. Maybe I need to cry. Maybe I need to tell you how I feel. Right? As a general pattern, like you can find some dudes that have their game together in that space, but compassion is huge. Compassion is what allows us to lean into our kids wherever they're at. Meet them there. Don't fix anything, and maybe just listen, because they can see through our heart posture what time it is, right? Compassion is, in fact, what my wife was able to model with me after things started coming together. When I tell people that my wife and I split up after 31 years, I just preemptively say, so you're thinking I cheated on her, I put my hands on her, or I had a drug addiction, right? No, no, and no. I had a mental health crisis that came to fruition, something that had happened to me as a child. And I want to address this quickly, but profoundly. There's a thing that is epidemic in our country, and it's called adverse childhood experiences. In other words, things are happening to young people that change the trajectory of their lives, that frankly make them incapable of these words. Courage turns into shame and fear. Compassion turns into judgment. Community, get away from me. I'm not trying to be around you. That was me. So for 20 some years, I was incapable of operating with these three words front and center until I got help. So that's the other part of fathers mattering, is that we can come alongside our children in brokenness and be the strongest person they know. That, my friend, is not a conversation any color of man is having on a regular basis. It's not permissible. We had a phrase in the military: when you get hurt, rub some dirt on it, get up. Right? You just don't ever get hurt.
Even from the standpoint of, men's as a child, you go back and you look at when you would fall down, you would say, you hear somebody say, suck it up, suck it up.
That's right.
Be a man. You ain't hurt. You ain't hurt.
That's right. Absolutely. And to that point, when my wife, after she called me a liar because she didn't believe the mental health crisis thing, because I didn't even know about it, it was one of those things, some bad things, you guys, that happen to us, they get buried. Right? We ain't trying to lie about it. My wife didn't understand that. But when I went to enough therapists and enough help, she understood it. She was able to have compassion on me. Right? And she wasn't willing any longer to say, too bad, so sad, you're a liar. And that began a model, we use the term legacy in here, of the legacy of our family, to where now we have two words we operate with a lot. And it required, let me tell you this again, this is where fathers matter. It required me owning my stuff and applying two words to both myself first and then my family. And it lit a fire: grace and forgiveness. Now, we're not up in church here. You don't need church for those two words. Grace is essentially getting what you don't deserve. Forgiveness, strike the word forget. That ain't happening anytime soon. Matter of fact, I'm glad it doesn't, because the fact that I can remember the way things went down in my life and still forgive people is powerful. So when I had my best Father's Day ever on record, this last Father's Day, my wife and I were separated for over the past 3 years. This last we were all in my home, and I was able to extend those 2 words to my entire family. And I was cringing, because when we do stuff like say, I forgive you, we kind of want a response back. We want reciprocation. We want to be accepted. We want a safe environment. And I didn't know what my kids were going to say necessarily. And they gave me the biggest, amazing presentation of love, gratitude, grace, and forgiveness that I could have ever imagined. And our family, 34 years into my marriage, is in a new season of some great things. That started with the way I chose to lean into all these things. Fatherhood matters. Your leadership matters. It's a big deal, right? Wherever you are on that trajectory, and I know there's guys in this room that may have had divorce and all kinds of hard stuff happening, but we can move forward and still be building legacy. So one of the things that's on the back of this sheet that I just want to bring your attention to, because it's here, and it's the obvious, right? That graph at the bottom, or that image at the bottom, that's focusing a lot of negative stuff of what happens when fathers aren't present in lives. What I really want to focus on is the statement above that. And Rosario, will you read that statement under session intro, please?
Fatherhood Matters, conversation about courage, passion, and community, will inspire and equip dads to fight for the hearts of their children. For some, it will provide hope, and for others, it may equip them with a tool. Either way, this important discussion will add value to the fatherhood journey.
Right? So a couple things I want to bring to your attention. Discussion or conversation. Hugely important. Dudes, we talk a lot, but we talk a lot about stuff that don't matter. Surface. And to include work. To include work. The work thing doesn't matter if we're leaving out substance, right? One of my least favorite introductions to another man is, what do we always ask each other? What do you do? As if that's the most important thing on the... What would happen if someone came up to you and said, tell me about your family, tell me about your wife, how's the relationship with the wife, or whatever, like something that actually matters, right? That's the kind of conversations Buddy and I have on about 4 levels deeper. Like we're getting in some stuff. Like my wife's been gone for a month to Arizona for all the right reasons this time. And Buddy asked me the other day, how you doing without your wife in the house? You guys have any idea what that might mean? Right? While the wife's away, I might play, whatever. And that can mean a lot of things to a lot of different dudes, but the idea is that is a really, really important element. And when we talk about conversation, it's got to be intentional, guys, and get ready for this. It's the same that applies to our kids. We have to be intentional. We have to have an agenda. Not an agenda to manipulate people, but it's got to be on the table, right? It's got to be on the table. So what I tell guys all the time, these young men that are coming in, practice conversations, because many of them have young children, with your male friends and your girl, your wife, your lady, that you want to have in the house in 5 years. Well, we just determined they don't have no friends, so where are we going with that? So I model meaningful conversation. And a lot of my conversations, dudes, are starting with brokenness. And when I tell guys that the trajectory of my marriage, I get like, what? And furthermore, you're willing to talk about that? But now I have guys, Rosario, you know what machismo is?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
It's just like really manly man.
Like on steroids, right? Right? So they have a name for it. Yeah, yeah. But you've operated in that space, Jay, trust me, because we're all dudes, right? So at the end of the day, like, we are not trying to have anything other than manly engagement on every level, right?
No emotion.
No emotions, right? Right? So I had two Hispanic young men in my office, and I've been knowing them at different times for different ways and reasons based on their relationships with me and their wives. But one of them decides to say something crazy. Yeah, they call me Mr. John. Mr. John, I need therapy. This dude said it. This old dude over here is like looking like through him when he says it. It's like, what the hell just happened? But it was a catalyst for different ways of thinking. It doesn't have to get that deep, though. It could be just literally stop the fist bumps and starting the hugs. My friend Buddy says, stop fist bumping your son. He wants a hug. Well, that's not what he's telling me. Trust me, he wants a hug. And you do too. And I know that's true because every time my wife's around, she's the hug machine. So, and my son's loving that, right? But this intentionality of conversations which lead to engagement is really important. I have this phrase in here, fighting for your children's hearts. That might seem weird or different, right? But here's what I mean by that. You have your children for a defined amount of time, and you don't know what that is. You know why I know that? Because my brother, who just texted me, had a 20-year-old son a year and a half ago. Had. The young man, my nephew Matthew, ended his own life. And I don't say that to be dramatic. I say that because for the time we have our kids, and I always like to say our kids are what God gives us in human beings to steward while we got them. Do the best we can, right? And sometimes that looks like literally fighting for the space in their chest. And that's connected to here, right? But it's part and parcel of this conversation. We can't do that outside of courage, compassion, and this last word, community, which I've touched on. But these kind of gatherings right here, extremely powerful. One of the things that I love doing more than anything in my work is what I call creating environments of vicarious learning. What does that mean? Y'all don't have to say a thing. You don't even have to nod your head. Y'all have been, because that's just almost impossible. Or you got a head cant when I said something, or a smile. Like people, there's tails all over the place, but you don't have to formally participate. So I often do panel discussions where I'm pulling on all kind of threads of people's lived experience and getting them to say stuff you wish you could say or wish had been said before, right? That's community. But what it does, it opens the Pandora's box for what's possible. You walk in a room or an environment thinking, machismo says I can't say that. I can't even lean towards that. I'm going to introduce two more words to the lean. If you do choose to lean into some of these things as a father, compassion, courage, community, you will quickly start learning a lot. You'll learn a lot about yourself. You'll learn a lot about other people. And what I like to remind guys, and this happened to me in my mental health crisis, as I was being taken from a mental health clinic to a hotel for 2 weeks straight, I felt like some kind of an imbecile. Like, what is happening? It was what I needed to do, was my rehab. I needed to do that to get myself right. But when you start having the opportunity to lean into who you are, you learn about yourself, but you also learn you ain't the only one, not even close. Adverse childhood experiences, every category. One of my favorite big words, ubiquitous, everywhere. You can make a safe assumption that every third cat you walk down the street and pass or in traffic is dealing with it. That's a safe assumption. On what level, we don't know. But as soon as we start learning, then here's where I'll end today. This is important. Who considers himself on some level with at least one human being on the planet a leader? Who considers himself a leader in this room? Come on, Rosario, you're a first responder. You get paid to act like one at the bare minimum, right? So, right, we're all leaders, right? So if you lean in, learn, then you can leverage those things for leadership. I have young men and women walking in Fayette Pregnancy Research Center all day. If I hadn't leaned in, learned, I would have nothing to leverage. I am vanilla. I am not interesting, right? I'm going to say the average age in this room, well, there's a couple dudes that are bringing it down, but we're grown in this room. We've got a lot of lived experience to draw from. Most men choose to bury, not leverage.
You're kind of being to bringing it down, right?
Yeah, of course, Q. Of course, Q. Of course. I'm not even talking about the body fat percentage, man. So yeah, but my point being is like the value, and I call this a chronological advantage. The value of parents versus the children is that we have a lot to offer if we're willing to do it. And that doesn't look like, okay, great, that was a great talk today. I'm fired up, I'm gonna go ahead and do what that dude just told me to do. Ain't happening like that. You got to create your own ecosystem, your own culture. You got to find dudes that are trying to do the same thing you're doing. And then do that over time and practice it. So I tell this to nearly every guy that walks in my doors, and it's an athletic imagery, right? The best ability, as much as Sports Center and all these athletes want us to think it's their athletic prowess. No, the best ability in any endeavor in life is availability. Show up. Show up. Show up. And that is not saying I'm in the room. What do you need? No, it's present. Be present. And we know the difference. So when we fight for the hearts of our kids, I'll end with that. They don't want our money, honestly. They don't want what we can give them. They want us. My daughter, 28 years old, she was 25 and change at the time. When my wife and I separated, she says, I don't want you as my dad anymore, and I don't need you. Straight emotion, straight anger, but it was her reality then. What she actually needed was the dad that came correct, was accountable, and radically vulnerable last Father's Day. I cannot tell that. She's on her way to my house right now. Lives in Peachtree City. Like, she is at our house like clockwork every weekend. She says it's because of the dogs, but she loves me, I know too, right? But point being is, I want this to be simple. If you leave with nothing else, the resonation of the words courage, compassion, and community, how do those look in your life? Have you leaned into them? Are you willing to lean into them? Are you willing to learn from them? And most importantly, because I'm a big leadership guy, that's all I do. Are you willing to leverage in your specific spheres of influence conversations like this one? We need these happening all the time. But it looks different for every guy, right? So I appreciate y'all for the eye contact. I appreciate y'all for the validation. I wasn't looking for validation. I was looking for eye contact. I got that. What's up, brother?
Well, one of the things that you said, I think, that is so, so relevant when you made the comment about the two things that we need as far as ourselves is the grace and the forgiveness. That is so true. And it's not just the ability to forgive someone else, but especially when we look at forgetting ourselves.
Amen.
Because, just when you were talking about that, going through that whole that whole transgression of going back and looking at your life and looking especially from a childhood, there are things that we as men don't want to forgive ourselves for that started from this time that we were children and still haunt us to this day. And we're not willing to release that and to ask God for that grace to be able to go ahead and move on from there.
Amen. Amen. And you're saying God, and I'm saying amen. You know what, guys? It doesn't have to be packaged any particular way. What it has to, we're all, have different proclivities towards how we work through what we work through. But I'm a proponent of the human element stuff. I need you, you need me. We're communicating by nature creatures. We need community. COVID and what preceded it with social media has jacked us up, right? Yes, sir.
I see though, but who's all married here?
So everybody's marrying our because, and I think it's a great example that you use where you brought in the marriage and the separation. That plays. I'm married, and then I'm at 25 years. That plays in vital part because that's a job and a challenge itself. That's right. So you got that element plus the kids, plus social media and the temptations that's all out there. Then you're fighting and struggling with the generation. This right here, my dad is a Vietnam vet, right? His dad fought. My dad only told me he loved me one time. Amen. And it was in an argument because my cousin dad told him. And I was like, Dad, why you don't take me up? You eat, don't you? So that's what we struggle with. And I get emotional about it. I got boys. So I have to train myself. Don't go at them like my dad would at me. I got 3 girls. So I had to go at them in different. So their advantage are the generational, you know what I'm saying, how generations change. Because if I go at my kids like my dad went at me, I wouldn't be married.
Correct.
I would have a kid.
Correct.
So I appreciate the conversation, but I have my challenges. You know, I have to work. I'm angry like Bud, but I'm a.
Yep. No, I get it. And really, the greatest sense of satisfaction for me is to have men that are making statements like y'all are making. Even the eye contact and the affirming, that's a big deal. And I don't know how many times in the last 30 days you got a conversation like this and how many times in the next 30 days you will, but it's probably going to be 0.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? It's probably going to be 0. Right? And that doesn't have to be that way. So again, much appreciated. Any other comments, thoughts?
One thing I'm going to share is that, I went through a lot of trials and tribulations in my life. And I work with a lot of people that go through trauma and try to find solutions outside, whether it's addictions or pornography or drugs or alcohol and voodoo. But my mentor said one time we were talking to people and they were in the highest form of their addictions, but they were married, they were a couple. And just depriving them of their family and their lives. And he said, man, he said, would you die for your kids? He said, yeah. That was shallow. Even at the depleted time of the point, he said, well, that's not the problem. He says, this is for your kid. That's, yeah. And then that's where, as men, especially, and I was telling these gentlemen here, it is the most deprived ministry or outreach in our nation because we have cancer, we have kids, we have diseases, we have breast cancer, we have all these military veterans, we have all these, but we have no one to say, what about the fathers? What about the men? Right? Yeah. And in our world, if there's an enemy, if he can defeat the men and isolate the men, like what you're talking about, and not bring community. And so I would encourage you as a brother, to find community. As John could open some doors that we have these conversations that are real.
Yep.
There would be nothing that was illegal.
Right. April's telling me I got to shut it down, guys. But what I'm going to tell you is that if you want to contact me, I got business cards for any reason, and we can just keep the conversation going. But I really appreciate it.
And I got a couple of gifts on John's part to mostly it's not really for you guys. I ain't bringing him in, but it's a gift made out of torn pieces of paper, like the torn pages are all like. You can probably give it to your wives or to somebody that you know that's really want to reject good time. So pick one up. Some of them have frauds, some of them don't. But it's the meaning of the story, and it's not that done. Like, I'd love to add this part of that conversation. But it's really neat. Door of engagement. You'll grip somebody with hope, peace, and strength, and empower them to deliver their right. It's just not big one.
All right, fellas.
Images is a filmmaker creating product videos, promoting brands and services. We also provide multi-camera HD 4K live streaming services to produce your live events to multiple platforms simultaneously with broadcast quality. We will create custom videos to promote and market your event, brand, or service, which will drive engagement on all digital and social media platforms. We create engaging social videos that draw in additional viewers, which allows your brand to stand out on social media. Simple, effective, easy. Let us help grow your business with energized video imagery.